What's up, guys? I am recording this video on January 1st. So, by the time it comes out, it'll be, I don't know, the 13th. I'm not 100% sure. I hope you guys all had a great start to the year, and I'm really excited for the new year, not only for my own personal dividend portfolio, which I will be reviewing on the channel, but I'm also excited for the YouTube game. 2023, I feel like I was getting started, I'm still getting started, but I feel I've kind of found somewhat of a voice, still working on it. But in 2024, I'm going to keep the good content coming. It's going to be more consistent, high quality videos. It's going to be awesome. I'm thinking about doing a few book reviews, maybe. I've read a lot of business books, including this one right here, actually, The Income Factory, which is a really good one for dividend investors. But we're going to take the channel in a great direction. I'm going to do a tier list of stocks. I'm going to be doing dividend news. I'm going to keep doing my portfolio reviews. Obviously, we're going to talk about stocks and ETFs, mainly dividend investing. And I'm going to share more of my own journey, maybe some examples where I've done well, maybe some bad examples. Let's not ramble all day. But the premise of this video, I thought this would be a fun one. A lot of you guys who are subscribed were probably not subscribed when this video came out. So my first ever video was called SCHD, My Thoughts on This ETF. So I figured, what cooler way to start the year than to react to my first deleted video. And, we'll talk about real briefly why it got deleted. So I worked at a financial advising firm at the time, and I posted this video. You can see it got 16 likes. It was doing pretty well, but it wasn't even up for, 24 hours. And it was like, I'm getting calls from corporate. I'm getting calls from my boss. I had to take it down. And then, I ended up having a series of meetings about trying to find a way I could do this YouTube channel, share my journey, share kind of my investing philosophy, one I've developed over six years now. However, we couldn't really get to a middle ground. And I did end up leaving that job, which was kind of a big decision. I like those people a ton. I learned a ton with that firm, and, I learned a ton from my boss. It was a great experience, but I don't know. I wanted to share my own investing journey with more of the DIY crowd, rather than the actively managed, pay someone to be your financial advisor. But I feel like we're rambling. Let's get into it. SCHD. We're going to do a live reaction to this one. So we'll see what I think. I haven't even peeked at this. So let's just get into it. Okay. Overview. I don't want to call my personal thoughts cons because this is... Okay, so today in this video, we're going to be talking about what's in SCHD. What are the holdings? We're going to talk about some pros to the ETF, and we are going to talk about cons, or I guess, not so much cons, but kind of why I personally don't invest in it. So let's see. So we pull up the holdings for SCHD. Here's, some of this is the top 10, I guess. We got Broadcom, Texas Instruments, AbbVie, Home Depot, Amgen, Merck, Cisco, Chevron, Pepsi, Coke. So these are the biggest holdings. There is a total of 104 holdings in this ETF. And as you can see, guys, kind of the theme for this ETF is going to be more established companies, okay? Companies that have been growing their dividend for a while. and companies that pay, a higher starting yield compared to something like Apple or Microsoft. You're not going to find, those types of yield on cost plays in SCHD, but you're going to get this kind of broad net of, established dividend payers, which I think can be great. But, on the other side of that coin, you're never really going to be able to zero in on, not to single anything out, but let's say Pepsi and Coke. Okay. So earlier this year, we saw a lot of, snack, sugary products. We saw kind of a quick decline in that industry. We've seen it with Pepsi, Coke, Hershey. Let's say we continue to see these two fall. What's going to happen here is the valuation and the risk to reward profile for kind of these individual stocks is going to be much more attractive rather than, okay, I'm going to buy SCHD and I am going to get my exposure to Pepsi and Coke. However, I'm not going to be in it as aggressively as if I bought that individual stock. Does that kind of make sense? So even here, we look at the first holding and the 10th holding. Broadcom had an amazing 2023, as anything that could be tied back to the chip sector, AI, anything did. Coke didn't have the best year comparatively to the S&P. However, as a dividend investor, we can be opportunistic. And like when Broadcom pulls back, okay, now if we want that one, we can build a position. Does that make sense? Versus at the same time, maybe we're interested in Coke. Okay. So on this channel, we talk a lot about being, opportunistic with our money. I preach on here, I'm not reinvesting dividends. There's no sort of drip plan. I'm taking new capital as well as the dividends that hit my portfolio, and I'm putting it towards my best opportunities and best ideas. And, I'm going to determine that through valuation, free cash flow growth, and, some technical analysis, but I'm not telling you that you need to pull up the charts every day. I know some people don't like that. That's fine. Okay. So let's move on. Now that we kind of have, an idea, what in the world? Now that we kind of have an idea of what kind of funds what kind of stocks SCHD holds. In this next section of the video, I go through kind of the methodology that Schwab uses for, constructing this portfolio. And this is very important to understand. I think too many people nowadays are like blindly trusting SCHD. And I know that, I know this one has a good track record, a low expense ratio of 6 basis points. And obviously Schwab is a reputable firm. But if you don't kind of understand the underlying strategies within an ETF you hold, it's going to be really easy to panic or lose conviction when something, bad happens. So here in the objective. Okay, this is SCHD's objective, as stated by Schwab, Charles Schwab Asset Management. The fund's goal is to track as closely as possible before fees and expenses the total return of the Dow Jones US Dividend 100 Index. Okay, so this is work we need to do as investors. We look up, Dow Jones methodology for their different indexes, and we scroll down. If you're doing it yourself, it's on page 19. I'll save you the time. But I'm also going to go through it, hopefully in a timely manner. Dow Jones US Dividend 100 Index. Okay, index universe. Anytime we see universe, we need to think, okay, these are candidates of stocks, ETFs, REITs, funds that are kind of on that, on that watch list. This is the initial candidates, and then we're going to narrow them down through this process. That's what they're doing at Schwab. So this universe, in order for them to even consider a stock to go in this one, it is constituents of the Dow Jones US Broad Stock Market Index, excluding REITs. So we talk about realty income on here sometimes. This one would exclude realty income. You're going to get no exposure to real estate, directly with SCHD. They must pass these initial screens. Before we even move into the further steps, it's got to be minimum of 10 consecutive years of dividend payments. Minimum market cap of 500 million. So we can't have any micro caps, really small companies. They have to be, big enough to, I guess, be trustworthy by Schwab. And a minimum 3-month ADVT. This means average daily volume traded. Tongue twister. A minimum 3-month average daily volume traded of 2 million. That's strictly for liquidity's sake. All right. SCHD, they have a lot of AUM. And with that, if they have to trade in or out of a stock, they need some liquidity there. So again, this is how they get kind of, their original participants, their universe. Now, after they've been selected, now we can go into the construction of SCHD. And we'll go through this. So there's four fundamental based characteristics that they're going to examine. They're going to look at free cash flow to total debt. Okay. They're just going to use that ratio. They're going to look at return on equity. It's a ratio we'll probably talk about more on the channel. They're going to look at the starting dividend yield. Okay. And this bullet point right here is what is oftentimes going to take out stuff like Apple, Microsoft, those guys that have a lot of potential, a lot of free cash flow growth, but, they don't have that starting yield that Schwab wants. Now, the way SCHD has been able to increase, their dividend year over year, everyone talks about it. SCHD has such a great track record of increasing dividends. Well, it's not the people at Schwab increasing the dividend. It's, the index that they hold. It's all those individual companies increasing their dividend. And the way they get that criteria is they determine the 5-year dividend per share growth rate using, this fancy calculation here. And essentially what this is what's the 5-year compound annual growth rate of that company's dividend. Okay, we don't need to go into all this, finite math or not calculus, whatever this is. Just understand this bullet point here, they're using the 5-year CAGR. Okay, now that they've taken, their universe and they've ranked each position by these 4, fundamental based characteristics, these 4 rankings are equally weighted, and it creates kind of a composite score. Okay. The top 100 of these scores are put in the index. Okay. That's what this is, guys. For Schwab at SCHD, part of the reason they've been able to perform so well is because it's very strict criteria. There's not a lot of discretion in this. It says here the 100 top ranked, maybe sometimes you'll see 104 and it won't be perfect. They definitely have discretion in the sense of saving you tax dollars if they can and just different things. But essentially there's no discretion within SCHD, and it's important for us to understand that. We'll move on down here to weightings because I actually am pretty unfamiliar with how they do this. So stocks in this index in the top 100 are weighted quarterly based on their market cap weighted approach. No stock can represent more than 4%. Okay, do we understand that? So when we go back to the holdings, seems I've since lost the holdings. But we saw on there, the biggest one was Broadcom. And, it had grown, it had appreciated to over 4%. All right, because of the year Broadcom has had. At this next quarterly, weighting, SCHD is probably going to scale back their position in that one. Okay, does that make sense? And for me, I wouldn't say that's a red flag, but I don't really think of things that way. And I'll try to further explain why I don't really like to trim positions, because, like, I could use Apple or Microsoft as an example. When I have capital gains in a company and, it grows to maybe a higher weighting in my portfolio than is, socially acceptable, that's good. Okay. That means I've identified a free cash flow grower. The market has rewarded me. I was in at a good time, and capital gains have essentially overweighted a position in my portfolio. But as a dividend investor, I like to be very selective. I'm not scared if I have a full conviction in a company and it ends up, growing to a bigger chunk of my portfolio. Okay. Essentially, what's going to happen in that scenario, and you'll probably see it better in some of my updates, but maybe I'm not adding to Apple right now. Okay. I'm building other positions. I'm building my smaller positions, or I'm starting new positions. And with time, okay, the weighting in Apple will come back, to more of an appropriate level. With Schwab, you're not going to get that. Okay. The best way I can sum this up is they're not going to let winners run. Does that make sense? So, like I said, not a lot of discretion here. Let's move on. Okay, so I ramble about this for, who knows how long. Pretty similar to what I just did there. And what else do we got going here? Okay, so in the next segment of this video, some pros of holding this in your portfolio. In the next segment of this video, I go over some pros. And, as I revisit this, guys, my thoughts are kind of going to stay the same. I could probably view this video a year and a half, 2 years from now, 3 years, whatever. And, I'll still kind of have the same outlook on a fund. It's a little different with stocks because news can pop up and stuff. But for the most part, I try to build my conviction around names. I try to do that through my own research. I try not to kind of go with, what everyone is saying. I don't know if you guys are on Reddit or whatever, even just being on YouTube, it's like you can feel sentiment around these popular names. You can feel it shifting. That ain't me. So, moving on, the pros of SCHD, and we touched on this a little bit. You're going to get that instant diversification across sectors. There's 104 holdings in SCHD. Maybe that's gone down since I made this, but basically there's around 100 holdings in SCHD. It should outperform on the way down. It should outperform the market. And, for me personally, when I say the market, I'm talking about the S&P 500. So, we'll jump over to Seeking Alpha, look at some charting. I've done a charting graph of SCHD price return, the S&P 500 price return, and I've charted it on a 3-year basis here. You can see the orange line is SCHD, the blue line is the S&P 500. And when I say it should outperform on the way down, we look at 2022. We know that year was basically straight down. 2021 was straight up. 2022 was, pretty straight down in the market. And then obviously 2023, we had a huge bull run to start the year, a little bit of a pullback indecision. And now the market is, running up again. So we go to 3-year price return. Just zeroing in here, guys, on this 2022 section, I guess the middle third of this chart, we notice SCHD, this orange line, it held up better than the S&P 500 in 2022. That's good. And I don't think people understand that because, there was a lot of negative sentiment around it, when the market turned at the beginning of this year. people were like, oh, SCHD is underperforming. Well, it had to underperform because it had held up better. And, the reason for that is because the companies in this one, like we said, are going to be more mature, better track records, but there comes a trade-off. There's going to be less growth prospects. Okay. So just for a quick example, something like Apple or Microsoft, they're reinvesting a ton into their technology, new product segments, even though they're huge companies, they're still in a very high growth environment and a very high growth sort of cycle of their business. Whereas something like Coke and Pepsi that could be an SCHD, there's less room for experimentation and growth as far as new consumer segments. So they're going to be paying more to shareholders in the form of that dividend. I just wanted to show this, give you guys a little bit of a visual for what I mean. There's also going to be less volatility in SCHD, at least historically. I said here 3.61 starting yield. I don't know what the starting yield is now, but we can peek at it real fast. It's 3.49%. So obviously SCHD has fallen since I made this original deleted video. Low expense ratio. Again, we touched on that. It's going to give you that. I don't know what that was. The 6 basis points annually for the expense ratio, and you are going to get that rebalancing for you. So, based on your own personal risk tolerance, if you're not someone who likes individual holdings in your portfolio, you don't want the risk associated with, okay, what if something goes wrong? I have to sell this, put the money somewhere else. What if I'm up and I have to trim? SCHD is going to do that for you. I mean, in theory, you could have a very diverse portfolio of dividend stocks using just SCHD. Okay. I said here too, track record of increasing dividends. And again, that's not Schwab. That is not Schwab's discretion. That is the index within Schwab's SCHD. Those individual companies, they go through this screener. They have that track record of increasing dividends on a 5-year basis. All right. And then that is reflected in the dividend you receive from SCHD. Another important thing to understand, guys, we want to have a full understanding, of what we're getting into. Let's move on before this gets crazy lengthy. So we go over the pros, and then here we are at the cons. I said cons / my thoughts. I still think that's fair. Okay, so the reason why I personally do not invest in SCHD is because although it might be, kind of opportunistic and it might be based on a charting approach, it might be kind of at a pullback, or maybe that starting yield's cranked up a little bit. For me, I'd rather search, within the stock universe and find, those better deals, those stocks I can buy, I can build positions into. I'm not paying an expense ratio. That's how I like to invest. I like to build positions, kind of get my diversification in the portfolio over time. And that's how I'm doing it, guys. I'm not going to just allow, someone else to do it for me and scrape money away from my account, year after year. I'm not against this one, but I do put a lot of time into this game, and I'd rather find, what I deem to be the best opportunities rather than, kind of just blindly pick an ETF. We'll move on. What else did I talk about in my first ever video? You can see the style of the videos has changed a little bit. I do still create some videos with like slide decks and stuff, but sometimes it's harder to kind of speak freely and, authentically about your journey if you're like so focused on bullet point. You catch my drift. Let's move on. Okay, so I did include a section, when and where could SCHD, potentially fit into my portfolio. And there are uses for it. So, before you guys click off the video, let's talk about some uses. It can be used to mitigate concentration risk. So, what I mean with that is, let's say you've identified some great ideas, but you only have 4 or 5 holdings, and you're kind of getting a sense of, okay, I don't know if I have the risk tolerance personally to have, this X number of holdings in my portfolio. Maybe I sprinkle in some SCHD. I stay on that dividend investor theme, and I get more diversification without being so concentrated. Does that make sense? Unexpected things happen, guys. I understand this. I'm 22. Relative to my portfolio size, I've got some bigger positions, but I do understand that there is risk. There's concentration risk that comes with that. Moving on, upside capture after a recessionary period. I think this was a great point I made then, and I'm going to reemphasize it now. So let's say, the market really takes a dive, maybe in 2024, 2025, if we see some sort of, real bear market. We see stocks coming down. Maybe there's a greater economic recession, whatever it is. If SCHD fell with the market, and we talked about how it might overperform to the downside, but if SCHD falls and reaches an attractive starting yield, an attractive risk reward, that's where I'd be willing to say, okay, this one is getting almost too good to ignore. This starting yield for, this amount of diversification. If SCHD falls enough, I would definitely consider throwing it in for upside capture after a recessionary period. Okay. But that's going to be a situation where there's a lot of stuff down. So, maybe even then there's individual opportunities. We'll have to wait and see, guys, how I feel when that time does come. Moving on. Guess I ramble about this for a few minutes. What else do we talk about, guys? Okay. I guess that's all we got for today. If you're new to my channel, thank you so much for tuning into this video, guys. It means the world to me. Like I've been saying, 2024 is going to be a huge year for the channel. And I don't say that to say, oh, I'm going to have so many subscribers. I'm going to have whatever. I say that because I want to step up my content. I know I can do even better. I'm proud of what I've made. But, just as I make more and more videos, I'm kind of feeling out, okay, what direction am I taking this channel? And if you've been with me through this ride, guys, I can't thank you enough. We see over here, this video just came out today on January 1st. It's a good one too if you want to check it out, but don't feel like you have to. Thank you for spending the time today with me that you have, guys. I appreciate the support. I appreciate the subscribers, and everyone take care. Let's build some wealth this year.